I wanted to pivot a little bit to a lot of the research you've done. And if no one that is listening or watching has watched some of your talks, I highly recommend it because they're entertaining, but you also learn a lot and you just break down a lot of the science in a way that's very observable. So I highly encourage people to watch that. In one of your talks, you talk about the game changers. I know when the movie first came out, everyone was like, I need to go plant-based. Look at the blood, that little experiment they did. Can you share a little bit about, what they shared in Game Changers? Is it true? What have you found from the research you've done?
So I did a complete takedown of Game Changers. So
Okay.
if you Google my name and CrossFit, so Greg Glassman, who was the head of CrossFit at the time
Okay.
Game Changers came out, he was incensed by it, and he organized a conference. And he's the kind of guy head of CrossFit, you've got the money to do that kind of thing. So he invited Gary Taubes, Michael Eads, Sarah Halberg, rest in peace, was there at the time, Dr. Asim Malhotra. Gosh, who else was there? There was a really good analytical guy, and his name escapes me at the moment. Georgia Reed was there. I mean, we just had the most amazing day. And Greg basically said, can you dissect game changers from your perspective? So Mike looked at it from a sort of anthropological perspective, which he does quite often, does really well. Georgia looked at it from a brain health perspective. And I looked at it from a, why would you be vegetarian? What are the arguments for being vegetarian, and why should you not be? So if you want the complete dissection, go and look at that. The experiment I draw out in that presentation, which I remembered more than the blood one, was actually the penis one. And they
Okay.
put in this contraption on men's manhoods and trying to claim that the night they had the bean burrito,
Right.
they had
That's right.
better erections than the night they had the, it's like, I mean, seriously, guys. But the whole movie was just completely cherry picking. So in that presentation, I did what they should have done, which is to say, okay, let's go back to the drawing board, which is what they should have done. Let's look at the totality of the evidence for a plant-based diet, because they were trying to say it was right nutritionally.
Mhm.
There are three arguments for following a plant-based diet. One is that it's better for your health. Two is that it's better for the animals, and three is that it's better for the planet. And they focused almost entirely on it's better for your health. So it'd be quite easy to go to PubMed, which is what I did, and say, right, let's look at the totality of the evidence for plant-based diets being best for things that count. So you start off with all-cause mortality, then you can look at things like heart disease or cancer or whatever. And there is just no flipping evidence. I mean, no wonder they pull out a study here and a study there, and they pulled out that terrible one by is it Dean Ornish or something? So I take that one apart. So the very visual blood experiment. So triglycerides, so what is showing up there in the blood, and what elevates triglycerides in the blood? Carbohydrates.
Mhm.
I think it was Elizabeth Park who did a great paper on this. I think from memory it's around 2002 or 2004. And she called it the paradox of hypertriglycemia, so high triglycerides in the blood. And she called it a paradox, as in when you're having fat, you don't get them, but when you're having carbohydrate, you do. And it's like, well, it's not a paradox to us. It's only a paradox to you because you've got it in your head that fat equals fat. If I eat fat, it's going to make me fat. If I eat fat, it's going to show up as fat in the bloodstream, but it just isn't. Fat is one of the main substances that we've evolved to eat. So it was just such a bad program. Oh, here's a athlete who's utterly gorgeous, and don't we all want to look like her? And oh, by the way, she's plant-based. Yeah, and she's probably been plant-based for 6 months. And see her in 2 years' time when she's like those vegan influencers on Instagram, when she's like, "Oh, I'm really sorry, I'm not vegan anymore." It was just so bad, really bad.
Or of the studies that you looked at on PubMed, there wasn't a specific plant-based study that showed, hey, this is the way to eat because all-cause mortality, all the metabolic illnesses, that they have a leg up. You did not find anything like that.
No, and as I say, I mean, this was 5 years ago, so I don't have the studies off the top of my head, but this is how I approach presentations. So if I'm asked to do a presentation on should we be vegan, then I go looking for all the evidence to say we should be vegan. I
Right.
ask the sort of null hypothesis kind of thing. Let's assume there's going to be tons of evidence that we should be vegan, and let's go looking for it. And there just isn't any. And you won't have to look very far into the presentation. I think we had 20 minutes for each presentation. So you could watch the whole thing, or even just in the first few minutes, I go through and say, okay, so this was the question I put into PubMed. This is what comes back. and then this comes back, and it's just nothing. It really is just nothing. And of course, there've been more papers over the last few years, but all they ever come up with, they're all epidemiological papers. All they ever come up with is, oh, there's an association between people who have plants in their diet and people who are super healthy. And you look at the types of people who are eating legumes and kumquat and quinoa and mangoes and that kind of thing. They're also highly educated and highly affluent and have good jobs and purpose in life and stable marriages and live in nice neighborhoods, and they have supportive family environments. You know, they exercise. I mean, they just have everything else going for them. They don't smoke. They drink socially with friends. They are completely different people to the people who don't have any plants in their diet, who are probably living on McDonald's buy one, get one free burger with the bun, fries, shake, because it's the most calories you can get for the least money. And that's how some people have to approach their diet. It's just two completely different people. And they try to make you think, oh, if only the people with all the disadvantages in life, if only they ate the kumquat and the quinoa, they'd be as healthy as those guys over there. And it just isn't true.
Yeah, and after that movie came out, I saw that all the fast food restaurants in America start to carry like the Beyond Meat hamburgers, and they were $2 more than the just the regular burgers. And a lot of people that do go to fast food are the ones that are either really busy or struggling financially, and then they pay for the more expensive, less than ideal for your health food because they think they're making a good effort on their health, especially after watching that. And I know it's been some time since that movie came out, and now a lot of the companies are removing the Beyond Meats because they're just not selling. But in that moment, it was really unfortunate because people would buy a $7 burger that was so bad for you with seed oils and all the manufacturing of it versus a $5 burger that at least had real beef. And so it's just really unfortunate. And then, in terms of some of the vegetarian myths, while you were doing a lot of this research and even just your own experience, what are some of the vegetarian myths? It's hard to understand as just an average person going through our daily lives. And then maybe it's that the Mediterranean diet has a little bit more studies. It's still very plant-based friendly. But it just seems like everyone is in agreement that vegetarian diets are the way to eat for heart health and just if you want to be healthy and live long. And so, what are some of the vegetarian myths that you would say that are not true?
Okay, I'll come to those in just a minute.
Okay.
I have to address that Mediterranean diet
Yes,
thing to start
please.
with. And I've written blogs on this on my site. So if you Google Mediterranean diet on my site, you'll get my view of it. And it's not just my view of it. This is the truth.
Okay.
So I go to the Mediterranean every year, and I have done ever since I was 10 years old. Many years I go more than once. So I've already been twice to the Med this year, and I'm going to go another time before the end of the year. I can absolutely, hand on heart, tell you that you could sum up the Mediterranean diet, and the countries that surround the Med are France, Spain, Greece, Italy, Malta. So those are your countries that you're looking at in terms of Mediterranean diet. So you could sum up the Mediterranean diet by, particularly from the French cuisine, if it moves, eat it. So they eat everything. They eat frog's legs, they eat snails, they'll eat horse, they'll eat the most disgusting things that you probably would not want to eat. So the Mediterranean diet is massively based on animals, very heavy on meat, particularly red meat. You don't see chicken that often in the Mediterranean. They're very big on fish, obviously, because they're bordering the Med. So it's seafood as well as sort of normal fish like bass, or, they have so many different fish. If you go for the catch of the day on the menu, it could be anything, any one of about 200 fish. Cheese is massive in the Med. Yogurt is also very high. There's no such thing as a low-fat yogurt in the Med. It's proper Greek yogurt, and it's full-fat yogurt wherever you go, unless you're in a British supermarket. And eggs are commonly used, particularly in things like desserts. So you've got creme caramel or creme brulee or other desserts that would use eggs as well. They do embrace vegetables and salads. They're very creative with those, but they don't have the kind of massive salad that a dieter would sit down to in the UK. The main thing on your plate is the meat or the fish, and then you've got some green beans, or you might have a couple of slices of potato with cheese on them, gratin dauphinois. The desserts are very much cream based rather than sugar based. It might be tarte tatin, which has got a whole load of apple, just a little bit of pastry, but that would then get served with vanilla ice cream or just real cream. They don't have any of that fake cream stuff. They have some fruit, but they don't eat anywhere near the fruit that we're told to eat. This 5 a day is obviously a myth. That is the real Mediterranean diet. So what researchers call the Mediterranean diet is a completely fictitious construct, and it's been constructed by researchers at places like Harvard, where they try to pretend it's high in whole grains, legumes, fruit, vegetables. That is complete and utter BS. You do not find a whole grain in the Mediterranean. I have looked for years. You do not find one. So French bread is white. Italian bread is ciabatta. It's white. Spanish don't eat bread quite so much. Their rice is white rice in risotto in Italy, white rice in paella in Spain. If they do eat any of the wheat-based stuff, the pasta, which is much more Italy than it is Spain or France, then it's white pasta. Lasagna is made with white pasta strips. Every grain is white. There are no whole grains in the Med. And if they have legumes, it may be a couple that are in a dish. So it might be a lamb tagine that has got a few chickpeas in it, but the base of the thing is lamb. So the Mediterranean diet, as studied in academia, is a completely fictitious construct. And the Mediterranean people are healthy because they have lots of sunshine. They have good working life balance. They have low stress relative to people on Wall Street and in London. And they eat real food. So vegetarian myths. There is a brilliant book by that name called The Vegetarian Myth by Leah Keith. And she puts it into 3 categories. And that's exactly what I have realized as well. So we concur that there are basically 3 reasons people go vegetarian. She calls them the 3 myths of being vegetarian, and we can call them that. Number 1 is that it's healthier for you. Number 2 is that it's better for the animals. And number 3 is it's better for the planet. So if we just quickly go through those, number 1, it absolutely is not better for you. So if you're going plant-based myth, so vegan myth, not just vegetarian. So let's take it to the extremes of you either eat animal foods or you don't. So if you're on a vegan plant-based diet, you are missing essential fats in the form that the body wants them. So omega-3s in the form of EPA and DHA, which are particularly found in fish, but are only found in that form in animal foods. You're missing B12, which is only found in animal foods. You're missing retinol, as I found out, which is the form that the body wants of vitamin A. You're missing D3, which is the form the body wants of vitamin D. Yes, you can get some in the sunshine, but we all can't get sunshine where we live for at least 6 months of the year because of seasons and nighttime. What else don't you get? Complete protein. You would have to combine, and you'd have to be very good at knowing what you combine to try to get that complete protein. Quite frankly, good luck, because you're not going to get anywhere close to getting what a steak would just deliver naturally. So the mere fact you're going to have to supplement on so many different nutrients just immediately tells you that is not how we've evolved to eat. That is not healthier for you. Interestingly, I never believed that. I never was vegetarian because I thought it was healthy for me. I knew enough to know that that wasn't true, even though I didn't know about the retinol. My view was I can be healthy enough for me, and it's going to be better for the animals. And that's the really controversial one, but I was wrong on that one as well. So when you come to the animals, Leah Keith opened with this story, and I couldn't quite work out why she was devoting so much time to it. So she talks about the fact that she's going to try and grow a lettuce. And then, of course, the slugs are trying to eat the lettuce. So for her to be able to eat the lettuce, she's going to have to do something. And what is she going to do? She's got to try to keep the slugs out, which indirectly is going to kill them because they're not going to get to her food. If you replicated that on a global scale, if you keep all the food away from the slugs, they're not going to be able to eat, so they die out. Of course, the reality is we end up putting down things like slug pellets, or we find ways of keeping them away from our food. So she stressed that story to demonstrate that there is nothing that we can produce for which something hasn't died. And the lettuce, of course, is not going to feed you. And where you get to with plant agriculture, and this is something that I did not want to admit as a vegetarian, and this will be something that no vegan wants to admit today. They will get quite hostile if you point this out to them. There's a brilliant academic paper by 2 guys called Fisher and Lamy and it's called Field Deaths in Plant Agriculture. And they try to estimate how many animals are killed by just crop agriculture alone in the US. And they estimated about 7 billion animals. And you think, well, how can that be? I mean, picture the combine harvesters that we've got at the moment sweeping across the field. I mean, they're the size of football pitches in the sort of the span that they can cover across the field. And hoovering up in that wake, inevitably you're killing birds, and the birds swoop down whenever there's activity in the field because they want to get the worms. You turn around in the combine harvester and then you've got the birds on the way back. So you're killing birds, you're killing worms, you're killing snails, you're killing voles, you're killing mice, you're killing rabbits. I hate to say it, if you've got houses nearby, you're killing domestic cats if they didn't get out of the field in time when the combine started up. So there is nothing that people can eat for which nothing has died. And people just need to be honest about that. And if you then look at, well, what would kill the fewest animals, you're actually better off just one person eating one cow. You could get about 600,000 calories from one cow. That would be enough to feed one person over the year. If you look at the calories you get from a chicken, it's about 3,200. So you'd need about 228 chickens to get the same number of calories. You wouldn't then necessarily get the same nutrients. It wouldn't be as good at iron and zinc and B vitamins and all the rest of it. But there is nothing that plant-based people are eating for which something hasn't died. And they just need to accept that. And when you can accept that, then you can start questioning the animal reason for going veggie. And then the final one is people say it's better for the planet because cows, they say they fart, it's wrong, they burp. But then vegans burp. We exhale CO2. You know, if you believe the CO2 argument, which I actually don't, CO2 is utterly life vital. It's like cholesterol, we die without it. It just also happens to be something that's very lucrative to demonize. So I don't buy any of all that anyway. But if you do buy all of that, then there are still counter arguments. Termites produce a heck of a lot more methane than cows. So why are you going after the cows? Oh, because you don't want us eating red meat. You don't want us being healthy. You want us eating fake food because there's lots more money in fake food. And if we eat fake food, then we also need pharma. You know, I really do think it's that corrupt. It's the only possible reason for our dietary guidelines being as bad as they are.
What do you think is the most sustainable way for our health? Because a lot of people will say, well, if everyone just ate meat alone, we couldn't be able to provide that level of meat for everybody.
I don't know that we can't feed the planet
Okay.
on meat alone. I've not seen any research that says we can't. So if anyone's out there saying, well, we can't, then they need to make their case. Barry Groves, it was actually one of the things that he was looking at just before he died. And then there was a Danish guy who was going to pick it up, but I don't know if he did. So I haven't researched that, but I don't see why we couldn't certainly feed the world locally on real food. So if you're looking at the kind of way that Joel Salatin farms, if we were doing it in a regenerative agriculture way, you don't just have animals on the fields. You've got cows grazing, you've got chickens running around in the similar area, you've got pigs eating anything. You've got certain trees that thrive when they've got ruminants serving up the land and tilling the topsoil, and then you put crops in the next year. So there are ways of managing agriculture so that we can feed a lot of people. And I'm really not convinced that the way we're doing things at the moment is the right way. One of the things that's happening in the UK at the moment, which just utterly horrifies me, is in the name of the environment, they are taking away farmland and covering it with solar panels and wind farms. And whatever you think of CO2, even if you think CO2 is a thing and we actually need to move to what they call renewable energy, what I call unreliable energy, what people don't seem to realize is because that energy is unreliable, you must always have 100% reliable energy available. And this is such an important point for everyone to get in their head. So because you can never guarantee that the sun is going to shine, for at least 50% of the year, it's not going to shine. We've got night, we've got seasons, and you can never guarantee that the wind is going to blow, particularly overnight in the UK, it hardly ever blows, and our wind is too strong or not strong enough. So you can never rely on that energy, which means at any one time you have to have 100% of your energy need available from a reliable source, which is nuclear, coal or gas. And that will never change. So when people say, oh, we managed to achieve 80% of our need today came from wind and solar, I just say, well, that's completely irrelevant, because you still needed 100% available in gas and coal, because you could not guarantee that the sun was going to shine or the wind was going to blow. Just couldn't guarantee it. So unless you were prepared for the hospitals to have to turn off the dialysis machines and the coma machines, and for the factories to shut down, you had to have it available. So it's just completely and utterly insane to be taking farmland away when that could be used for regenerative farming to get us more self-sufficient. But again, it's not what they want. They're already growing vegetables upside down in greenhouses in the UK with the lush green lands that we've got, the fields that we've got, the hillsides that we've got, the rain that we have. There is absolutely no reason for that. And that's all so called in the name of saving the planet. I can only conclude that this is just one gigantic lie that we've been told.